Hello, and welcome to the November edition of Community Connect with the Marshall Chamber of Commerce. My name is Brad Krett, president of the Marshall Area Chamber. And this month, I have Jim Marshall. He's the director of public safety for the city of Marshall. Thanks for being here, Jim.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and appreciate you, Brad, and all that you do for our community as well.
Thank you, absolutely. As always, we'll kind of kick off today's edition, kind of recap October. It was a busy October. We had a lot of things going on. It's good to see the amount of things that we're able to kind of get out and do. You know, in October, football and volleyball joined some of our other fall sports, cross country and some of the other ones. Tennis was out there. Thankfully, football and volleyball was able to join Marshall High School of Sports in the state of Minnesota. So it's good to see some of those popular sports back up. Obviously, some of the seating is limited, but with the, Studio One does an excellent job. If you ever seen them produce these on Friday nights football, gosh, they do a great job. So if you don't have an opportunity to go to the game, watch it on Studio One and on cable or stream it. First week of October was busy in Marshall too. It was homecoming at SMSU. Obviously, some of the activities didn't happen, but the parade did happen. It was a good turnout for the parade, and the 5K and 10K event right here on campus happened as well. Same week, Fire Prevention Week. Of course, last month I had Fire Department Chief Quentin Brunsvold was my guest, and they were promoting, Prevention Week. Of course, it's a very busy time for them, and very important to have, for his team to go out and get that word out about fire prevention. So, of course, they had the pulled pork meal on that evening. I think they sold out, right?
They did.
Yeah. So I believe they gave out like 650, they sold 650 meals or something like that. So congratulations to Quentin and his team. A little bit later in the month, there was two candidate forums. Of course, we had one local one first, and that was for the mayor and the school board race. And then the following evening, we had the House and Senate race forum right here on campus. So thanks to everybody that participated and everybody that tuned into those races, to those forums. The inauguration of the new Veterans Memorial, happened downtown on October 15th, and I know, Jim, you were there. What a beautiful event, what a great day that was.
It's just a beautiful park.
Yeah.
I've encouraged everybody that can make it down there to just see it, and encourage them to see it in the evening, in the nighttime.
Yeah.
With the lighting, it's a special place.
Yeah, I grew up in Marshall. It's like Bright Folk Auto Sales, and they're out south of town now, and what a change this park has had over the last 25 years, that's for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So thanks to everybody that came. It was kind of a drizzly day, but thanks to everybody that came and participated in that event. The Marshall Area YMCA Strong Challenge kicked off on October 19th, and this is just a way you think about all the employees that have been stuck at home, working from home, and this is an opportunity just to kind of get out there, encouraging everybody to do 20 minutes a day of activity, and it's not too late to sign up. Although it started on October 19th, they're still wanting people to sign up, and you will get a text message or it's saying, hey, have you done your 20 minutes a day? It could be walking the dog, going for a run, getting on your elliptical, or whatever the case is. Go to the Y. If you're a member. So thanks to the YMCA for putting this on. And finally, this past weekend, of course, was Halloween week, and over at the Merritt Center, they had their haunted tower, or haunted house at the fire tower out there, and they sold out. They drew 230 people, and because of the COVID limitations, they actually had to get sign-ups ahead of time. But congratulations to Cassie and her team on getting the amount of people out there in a safe way. Similarly, in downtown Marshall, they had a trick-or-treat event with participating businesses that brought a lot of people downtown. So thanks to all those who came downtown this past Saturday as well. So with that, let's move on to our guests. And like I mentioned, we have Jim Marshall, and he's the Director of Public Safety for the City of Marshall. And thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
So can you share with us what the Marshall Police Department is like in terms of structure, the different roles within the organization, the number of employees that you all have?
I can. Thank you, Brad, again for inviting me. I'm always eager to share a little bit about the police department. It's a great organization, and love to share it. We have approximately about 30 employees that work for the City of Marshall for our police department. 22 of those are sworn personnel, meaning they're licensed police officers. We have what I would consider somewhat of a vertical structure within our organization. There's my position, followed by a captain who really does a lot of the administrative duties, some of the training requirements and policy mandates that we have to stay on top of. That's really his responsibility. We have 2 sergeants, one that oversees our patrol division and one that oversees our investigative division as well. We have an operation that's open 24 hours a day, every day of the week and every day of the year. And a big part of that is scheduling, and that's their responsibility to ensure that we have proper coverage, be respectful and mindful of people's time off, vacation, sick time, and that's a job that just never ends with scheduling. So our sergeants are responsible for that. We also have 3 corporals, and our corporals are really our frontline supervisors, and they respond to all the calls with our officers and give guidance and direction where needed. And they also have some other responsibilities in terms of our body camera stuff, and we can get into that maybe a little bit later, some of our discussion. But then another position that parallels those frontline supervisors is our detectives, and we have 2 detectives. And they really have a big caseload because they usually do all the follow-up for all the cases that our police officers handled throughout the day. They're responsible for picking those up and seeing them through to the end. Not only just our officers' cases, they also take a lot of reciprocal calls in cases from human services, from child protection, from adult protection. So they're responsible for following up on all those cases as well. We also have a community service officer, and if you've ever seen our truck within the city marshal, the one with the cage, I mean, he does a lot of different jobs within the police department, but one of his main one is our animal shelter, in charge of that and making sure that animals are cared for, that we're doing everything we can to reclaim them or to adopt those animals out. And maybe on that note, maybe I just want to reference or mention that in the last 2 months, we've fired up our Facebook page that's related to our animal shelter. So I encourage people to go out and search for that. We try to keep it up to date as much as possible. And again, to look for your animal if it's missing or if you're looking for one to claim, to adopt. Please take a look at that. We also have a records clerk, records officer, and she's responsible to making sure that all of our paperwork is done and done properly before it's sent off to our prosecuting attorneys. She's responsible for sending all the information off to the state of Minnesota, and also responsible for all of our data requests that come in if people are looking for records. That all is funneled through her. And finally, we have an administrative assistant, and she's just not my assistant, but she's used by a lot of people within the police department in a great way. So, yeah, a busy place, and it's a great organization, and enjoy working with everybody on my team.
Good. So 2 years ago, you became the Director of Public Safety for the City of Marshall. What are some of the key areas you focused on early in the first 2 years since you became the Director?
Well, I'd say the 2 things, the first thing that I focus on, and I talked a little bit about our command structure that we just went through. Before I took over, that's obviously a pretty vertical command structure. Before I took over, I would say what we had was somewhat of a horizontal command structure, and I really wanted to step back and focus on ways in which we could improve our communication within the police department, ways in which we could identify different job responsibilities and duties within the police department, as well as maybe create some opportunities for advancement for some of the less experienced officers. So I really took that fairly seriously. I stepped back and took maybe a 3-step approach. Number one, I wanted to get a little history to see where we had gotten to where we were, where we had a horizontal command structure of really just sergeants. And that was even when I first started, 20-some years ago. And I reached out to officers that had worked in the police department back in the 60s to see what they had in place, what worked for them, and which was really interesting. And then I did what I guess I would call a little organizational research, which was probably to my favor because I worked through the organization for the last 20-some years. And I knew what we did well, and I knew areas in which I think we could see some improvement, and wanted to focus on that. And then the last step was to come up with a vision and a plan and share that with our city council. And I made it very clear, from the beginning with our city council that this wasn't about finding positions for people. It was about finding positions to fill those gaps that I found within our structure and things in which we could do better. And it really worked out. And, as I said here in talk, it sounds like a fairly easy thing to do. But when you start talking about restructuring and job descriptions being changed and pointing on positions and pay possibly being impacted. Takes a lot of work, and I really need to give credit where it's due, and that would be with a lot of help from Sheila Dubbs, who's our city human resource manager, and helping me navigate through all of that. So that was my first task, our goal that I kind of focused on. Second thing was body cameras. You know, I always knew early on that body cameras just had a tremendous amount of promise in law enforcement, and I really felt that implementing a body-worn camera program, I'm going to say program because it's more than just putting on a camera and turning it on. That's a whole program, but I really thought that it would bring a lot of transparency to what we do, and build a lot of trust within our community if they would ever have a chance to see the video footage and see what we do on a daily basis. So I really worked hard on getting that program up and going.
Good. In what areas have you seen the biggest change in law enforcement since you began your career with the Marshall Police Department?
You know, Brad, that's a good question, and my answer would probably be what would other people would say within their organization, and it's going to be technology.
Yeah.
You know, it's just been some significant changes that's really impacted our profession to the better. I'll use it like my radio, for example, and we can start with the radio. You know, when I first started, we really had 2 channels, one for Lyon County and one for the city of Marshall that we communicated on. And we quickly moved from having an analog system to a digital system, which in theory, and I can't even call it a radio because what I have on is really a computer.
Oh, yeah.
With the capability of reaching out to somebody sitting up in Duluth, technically, and a radio, again, it's not a radio, it's a computer. On a light end probably is $5,000–6,000, but it's probably one of the most important pieces of equipment that obviously we carry. You can go as far as then talking about computers in our squad cars. Never would I imagine that we'd really be having computers in our cars that, you know, we have access to all of our local information, all the reports that we do. We can access all the state information. We can run driver's licenses. We run license plates, not just from the state of Minnesota, but from across the country. And as fast as we can enter that information, it comes back just as quick, which has been a game changer, you know, for us. It's a computer that we receive when 911 calls come in. Our dispatchers can push that information right out to us. They don't even have to necessarily call us on the radio. We can see the calls we're responding to. With that, we talk about maybe GPS and mapping, which is, when I first started, our map was a sheet of paper of the city of Marshall that had a little ledger that had the street that you would find if you didn't know where you were going, and you would link the letter with the number, and you kind of intersect those and think, oh, that's where Walker Lane is, that's where I need to go. Well, now that's all automatically plotted into our computers, you know, which has been a great benefit.
Yeah.
And then just we talked about body cameras, maybe our intermediate weapon with the tasers, which has been developed since I started.
Yeah.
You know, that no doubt has saved lives. It's saved lives in Marshall, and it's saved many lives across the country. So great technology, and that's the biggest change that I've seen in over 20 years.
Yeah, technology has come so far in so many different aspects in the world today. Of course, the changes I think of growing up in Marshall, I remember when the police department was downtown, where the city hall, of course, was just torn down, and the Viking football cards you guys used to pass out.
Yeah.
And it still gets brought up in conversations today. So yes, a lot of positive changes, that's for sure. COVID-19 has certainly impacted businesses and how we live today. How has it impacted the police department in terms of operations, and has it changed the number of calls for service the officers respond to?
Right. You know, that's a good question. I figured we wouldn't get through today without talking a little bit about COVID. You know, one of the responsibilities that I have with the City of Marshall is being an emergency manager. And when we talk about goals, you know, when I kind of identified some goals for this past year, one was to focus on emergency management a little bit more, to bring the leadership within our community, our city government together, and truly understand what emergency management is all about. And we actually did that. And one of the individuals here behind the cameras is Alex Peterson, and he was part of that. He's part of our emergency management team. And in March, we fired up our first meeting with some of our city leaders and had discussions. And, you know, we're good at floods. We've done them. We're good at them. We know storms, and we know what needs to be done. And in that very first meeting, in the beginning of March, not once did we ever have a discussion about a pandemic. Never, was not on our radar. And within a week later, a few days later, I mean, we were in full swing of preparing for a pandemic. We were talking about incident action plans that we send off to the state of Minnesota to let them know what we're doing and what our plans are. We started to talk about continuity of operations within the city. Look, we know that we couldn't shut the doors to the city, that government needed to function, needed to be open, we needed to pay our bills. We needed our treatment plants to be, our water treatment plants, sewage plants to maintain the services that they do. And so we worked hard on our continuity of operations plan, identifying the different chains of leadership within the government. What if our city council all got sick? You know, how are we going to operate? How are we going to function? What if our city administrator becomes ill? You know, just working through all those things. So we spent a lot of time on that. We did, you know, a lot of the city leadership worked on that, and we did a great job with it. And I give credit because we've had other communities that quickly reached out to us knowing that we had that in place to see, wanted to take a look at it and use ours as a template. We also worked close with our healthcare provider. Look, we knew that public health and our healthcare provider was going to take the brunt of this. They were going to take full impact with this pandemic, and we knew we needed to do whatever we could to help them out. And again, Avera and their leadership never shuffled their feet in this response. I mean, they were focused, they were locked in on what needed to be done, not only to help the city of Marshall, but also our region. You know, I don't know if people realize that they stepped forward and kind of raised their hand when it came to an alternative regional care site. Huge responsibility, and quickly started putting things in place to be able to have something operational if the National Guard stepped in and said, we need your help. So I'll give credit to their leadership because they never wavered in their efforts. You know, other conversations that took place that you don't like to talk about is we didn't know really the impact that this was going to have on our community, even with mass fatality planning. You know, what if our morticians became ill or not able to keep up with the demand of things, and making sure we have things in place, buildings in place, procedures in place, and how you respond to that. So a tremendous amount of discussion and time in preparation in the first month, maybe 2 months. How it impacted the police department. You know, once we worked through that, I realized quickly, we don't close our doors. So
Right.
we needed to do everything we could to ensure the safety of our officers. And, you know, I mentioned schedules earlier as a big part of what we do. And our schedule system is rotating shifts, and there's a lot of commingling between our officers, and we realized that we can't have that. We couldn't do that. So we pretty much split our department into teams, 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week, and to really eliminate any interaction other than the teams that would come in and work that day. And then put safety precautions in place from cleaning. And, you know, our call load maybe didn't go down like we initially thought it would be. The only thing, we didn't have control over that. We don't have control over, you know, the needs of other people. The one thing we had a little bit of control over is what I would call our self-initiated contact. And maybe if somebody's going 35 miles an hour, do you stop them? You have maybe use really good discretion. Not that that's the case anymore. I want to be clear.
Right.
That's not the case anymore. But we just tried to be smart about what we were doing early on until we truly knew a little bit more about this pandemic and the impact it would have.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for that. What challenges do you see law enforcement facing in the future?
Well, I think it would be wrong for me if I didn't maybe mention a couple of things. Obviously, some of the national events that have taken place have been troubling.
Right.
I mean, they just have. And I mean, we can be specific. We can talk about the George Floyd incident, which was very upsetting for a lot of us and law enforcement. And I made that clear early on to our city leadership and our city council that, you know, number one, it was upsetting. Number two, that if that culture does not exist within the Marshall Police Department, I want to be clear. I want to be clear to our community on that. And the third thing is that that's not the way we train. That's not what we do. And that's not, again, the way that we've been trained to do. And I guess if there's anything that's positive that can come out of this is maybe some really good, worthwhile discussions that we have with different communities of culture within our community and the diversity within our community. And we look forward to that. You know, I've always prided ourselves on having a strong partnership with some of the different ethnic groups within the city of Marshall. And that hasn't changed, but if there's discussions that we can have that's going to strengthen that even more than willing to be part of it. The other maybe challenge that I see, Brad, that we're facing, and this was even before some of these issues that came up in the past year, and that's with recruitment regarding police officers. When I first started 2 years ago, I had an opportunity to meet with the Assistant Commissioner of Public Safety to talk about some of these issues regarding recruitment. And they really track closely the number of people that go through law enforcement training. We have a post board, our Police Officer Standards and Training Board, that oversees our licensing exams, that we do. They track the people that take those exams, the people that pass the exams, and the number of vacancies that are open in our profession. And when I first started, you'd have a significant amount of people taking those exams, and you'd have about this many jobs available. And we started to see the trend where that really started to even out. Actually, it maybe tipped the scales a little bit a few years ago. So we thought, okay, we're in a little bit of crisis mode. Department of Public Safety knows that the long-term outlook was that there's going to be a lot of retirements, a lot of changes made within the next 3 to 4 years, and that those numbers are going to be, the job openings are going to be up here, the people going into law enforcement profession are down here.
Yeah.
And you can't compromise. You can't settle for anything but the best. You're asking people to make life-changing decisions in seconds, and you can't settle. So we're trying to come up with ideas and to recruit people into our profession, and so we have a positive outlook for our future.
Right. I mean, something like that happened in Minneapolis certainly puts a black mark on a lot of good people, that's for sure.
It does.
And like you were just saying, it's even harder to recruit. Who wants to get into an important profession like that when, it's sad. And then you're right, it should have never happened. Thank you for everything that your department does. I know you're active at the high school, and it's really important to have, Officer Van Louis out there.
Right.
And, all the collaborations you have in town.
Right. You mentioned, I forgot to mention our school resource officer position earlier on, and that's always probably close to my heart. Brad, I don't know if you remember, 8 years of my career was spent working in the schools and implemented our school resource officer program. So the connection to our youth is extremely important, and always will be for me.
Yeah, I'm glad that she's there, especially with having a 10th grader and a future high schooler there. It's nice to have, that presence there at the Marshall High School. So, with that, is there, if there's one message you had for our watchers out there, what could it be?
I don't know if it's a message. It's maybe more of a thank you. I'm so grateful to live in the community that we do. That's been so supportive of our educational system in the Marshall School District, and so supportive of the Marshall Police Department, and that's never been questioned. And it makes me proud to live in Marshall, and I'm glad this is where I've been able to spend my career in law enforcement, and truly appreciate all the kind cards and well wishes that we've received over the last year. Very grateful for that, and grateful for everything our community does for us.
Absolutely. The business has really rallied around you all, that's for sure, too. Of course, so let's kind of move on. Let's kind of touch on what's going on here in November. Of course, today is Election Day, and so if you haven't dropped off your ballot, you have until 8 o'clock tonight. So hopefully you do your civic duty and get out to vote, that's for sure. It's very important. This upcoming weekend is deer opener weekend, and of course we invite all the hunters to the Marshall area. While you're here, go check out our restaurants, go check out our shops. We have a lot to offer here in the Marshall area. Do you hunt?
I do.
Yeah. Do you hunt deer?
I do a bow hunt.
Yeah. So obviously a big weekend, and we invite everybody into town and have a great weekend. Of course, it's 2 weekends of hunting, right? For a gun anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not much of a hunter. My son is. Good for him. The Gobble Wobble annual 5K event is on Thanksgiving morning in YMCA. That's kind of like one of their last big events is the Shamrock Shuffle back in March. Of course, they're going to be doing another one on Thanksgiving morning, but they're going to be doing it in intervals, and you're not going to have to see this big group of people running out of the YMCA. They're going to be doing it in intervals, and if you're going to be out of town, you can sign up, support the Y, and run from where you're going to be, and run virtually. Of course, at the end of the month, Prairie Home Hospice and Community Care is going to be doing their Light Up the Night. It's going to be through the whole month of November. It's going to start on December. November 27th is when it starts with the parade. It's going to run every Friday and Saturday and Sunday through December 27th. So thank you to Tara and her team for putting this great event. You know, what a great event this is for the community.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it did a lot of volunteer opportunities. Reach out to Tara and her team at Prairie Home Hospice. And, you know, if you have a team that still wants to put up lights, of course, there's going to be a lot of volunteers needed for the actual weekends itself, too. The Chamber has a big slate of events going on in November. The Horvath Funeral Home is actually going to be hosting a Business After Hours event on November 19th. So check out their new facility if you'd like, just don't stay too long. Lastly, as we get closer to December, I can't even explain how important it is to do your shopping here in the Marshall area more than ever. Our businesses really count on you just as much as you count on them for that gift card that they graciously donated to your favorite charity event. You know, Jim, I was reading over the weekend, the founder of Amazon is worth a whopping $179.4 billion and is the richest person in the world. Tell me this, do you want to support him, who gives nothing back to our community, or to our local businesses who invest, you know, as much as they do in our community?
Right.
Yeah, it seems like a no-brainer to me, and I can't preach it enough to really support our local businesses. It is, and it's all a month-long deal. You know, they're not really having, Target and Walmart of the world aren't really having like Black Fridays, don't big groups. So here's your opportunity to really support those local shops. To take this one step further, I want to tell you a little bit about the community multiplier effect. 50% of every dollar you spend at independently owned business circulates through the community 7 times, whether it's jobs, taxes, payroll, or as I mentioned, a donation that goes back to your community fundraiser. If you shop online, only 1% stays locally, and that's only if it's a delivery person that is local. So please shop the Marshall area for this upcoming holiday season. So with that, Jim, I sure do appreciate being my guest here this month. All these updates in November can be found on our Chamber website, which is a new website. Actually, it just got updated this week, marshallmn.org. The visit website is visitmarshallmn.com. And with that, next month, Michelle, Library Director from the Marshall-Lyon County Library, will be my guest. So once again, Jim, thanks for being my guest.
Thank you so much.
Have a great Thanksgiving, and thanks again for watching. We'll see you in December.